a finale for our series on aging, although we can revisit it again because it seemed like there was a lot of territory to cover. So we heard about longevity, lifespan, life expectancy, and wondering how to be productive in our later years. And a lot of times we think of productive seniors as that woman who's skydiving when she's 97, or somebody who's still in the workplace when they're in their 80s. But there's also so much non-economic contribution that seniors can make. And from the book, From Aging to Saging, those parts that I have read, I have a few excerpts about this that I'd like to present. If elders must remain in the marketplace, then by adopting a service orientation, they can model to their younger colleagues how to transform work from cutthroat competition into a source of inner fulfillment. And in our workplaces, those of us who still have them, we can be mentors to the younger workers. And then in a few paragraphs later, while productive aging propagates the image of elders as active, engaged, and vital, ultimately it presents a rather weak and incomplete vision of life. By insisting on the productivity of the old, we put the last stage of life on the same level as the other stages. This sets up a power struggle over who can be the most productive, a competition that the old are doomed to lose. By celebrating efficiency and productivity, we abandon the moral and spiritual value of life's last stage, stripping old age of meaning. What we need is a wider vision of late life productivity that includes values such as altruism, citizenship, stewardship, creativity, and the search for faith. In short, we need a spiritual vision that recognizes the value of elders' non-economic contributions to society. And I think that's something we can all hope for and look forward to as we age. There were suggestions then for exercises in envisioning our own aging. And one is first of all, just thinking about someone you know or have known about that you feel has had a very productive eldership, be it economic or non-economic. So if you have some thoughts about that, someone that you could look to now and think, I would like to age and be productive, morally, socially, as a mentor, like this person. Who are you thinking of?
My dad.
Tell us about him.
Well, he's in his mid-70s, and he still works. He drives automotive parts to businesses, and he is just uncomfortable with emotions. I tell him I love him because I never did that with Mom. But anyways, he's like, I love you too, bye. He's uncomfortable with emotions. It's funny, makes me laugh.
Somebody I think about all the time is my mom. She had breast cancer 3 times, which is amazing, and that is not what killed her. But she was always on the go, always. Visiting family, visiting children. And I think that maybe wasn't as much a volunteer as just showing us how to be when we become my age now. And I called her on her 82nd birthday, and I had walked in a breast cancer race. And since she had breast cancer, I called her and we talked for the entire time from Cedar Rapids to Iowa City. And 2 days later, I get a phone call from my youngest sister that she had passed. And that particular day, she had gone out to breakfast with a friend. She had gone to her grandson's soccer game. She came home and said, I don't feel well, and that was the end. And that's what I pray for every day on how I want to go. Yeah. But anyway, she was a real role model for go, go, go in doing things.
And my dad was in the military. He was a Marine.
Esther, I have to say that I'm thinking about you. You have helped with Habitat for Humanity, I think all over the world, or in some different parts of the world. You are involved in Inside Out ministry. You are teaching English as a second language to immigrants. So I'm thinking of you and how I can, do more.
Boy, that's a large, that's a large charge to follow. Thank you.
I have a couple of friends who have picked up maybe latent interests after their retirement, but things that they had not done prior to retirement. One we all know, Bob, and his photography, which is just phenomenal. But he mostly started that in his retirement. And the way that he can see beauty and then share it with other people and I always enjoy seeing his photographs on Facebook, because I appreciate the way that he sees the world so clearly and so beautifully. He always finds beauty in things. And another is a friend who, I don't know, some of you might know him, but he's not a member of this church. But he picked up painting in his retirement. Now, this is a guy who can already do everything he puts his mind to. He's a flute player, he's a swimmer, he's good at everything he tries. But in a few short years, he's good at art as well, and he'd never done it before his retirement. So I guess what that tells me is sort of be brave in your retirement. Don't just stick to the things you necessarily know, but if there's something you haven't tried and you'd like to try it, give it a go.
I have 15. Yes, I was just going to comment there. I have 15 boxes of things I need to finish. So.
After retirement, we were still living in Macomb, Illinois, which is pretty small compared to Iowa City and Coralville. And everybody knew us, and everybody knew what we could do, or what they thought we could do. And so the minute we retired, people were on the phone saying, Cindy, could you cover for me here? And Jim, would you cover for me over there? Because they had already pigeonholed us. Okay, so we were kind of trapped into doing what we'd always done, and the only way to escape that was to get out of town. So we did. We came back to Iowa City, which was what we always wanted to do anyway, but once we got here and nobody knew us, we could start over. We could start new things, and we both did. And Cindy got terribly active in the League of Women Voters, and I got involved in stuff like the newsletter. I'd never written a journalistic word in my life. Spanish. Yeah, we started Spanish after retirement. You can actually do it. You can speak a language if you start it at age 65. So don't think you can't. You have to be 18 or something. Not true. And we proved those experts to be wrong who said it couldn't be done. So that's the beauty of changing your locale, because that changes people's expectations of what you can do, and it sort of frees you up.
I have to think of my mother, who worked all her life. She started as a Rosie the Riveter during World War II. But then she worked at all kinds of jobs, whatever she could find over the years, factory jobs, John Deere, for example, and then office jobs and whatever she could do. So she was busy when I was growing up, but, you know, she paid attention. And then whenever I needed, for some reason, an ear, she was always there. And she was a cheerleader. That was her role. So she'd say, "You can do it, Cindy, you can do it." So I think she was enthusiastic about her work, enthusiastic about her child, enthusiastic about, you know, whatever she could be. And when she retired, she plunged into the joys of retirement. And so she did all kinds of things that she hadn't done for years, like read a lot and travel a little bit with us at the end. And so I would say that, you know, embrace your life, but pay attention to the stages that you have, right? So that's what I learned from her.
Polly?
At 87, and all my years of having my family and so on and so forth, I saved stuff. And I did do some scrapbooks up to about the time that Nick, my youngest, who is now 60, was 16 or so. I kept scrapbooks. And I have some of trips that we've taken. But what I always planned to do when I was retired is put all the rest of this stuff into scrapbooks. Well, it was enormous. I mean, I had boxes and boxes of stuff. So my two older kids, Nick and, or younger, I guess, Nick and Martha came over, took them all to Martha's house, and we all went through them and got them sort of chronologically arranged by decade. And now we are not making scrapbooks, but they're scanning stuff. So, and a lot of it has been fun for me, because among the things that turned up were old scrapbooks of my mother's about her girlhood, which she'd never really talked about. And so it's wonderful to have all of these pictures, and of course there are lots of, some unidentifiable pictures that just are old folks that I just don't know who they are, but not so many, because people kind of kept pretty good track. And my Uncle Joe, who was married to my Aunt Ann, who was my dad's sister, did a big family chronology once. So we have that. This thing is going to end up, if I were famous, somebody'd be just thrilled to have all this. But I'm not, but the family kind of likes it, and we all like it. And I said we send it around when we get something done to my sisters and to my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and they could just look at it or not. But it's been really a lot of fun. And
what a great bonding experience for you and Nick and Martha. What a great bonding experience.
Oh, it's just great. Once a week we get together and do something about it. And that's just been such a pleasure. And I couldn't have begun to do it without them. I mean, we'd have to just put a match to the whole thing, I think. So it has been wonderful. And the other thing that now I do is crewel work, and that's because I won a big thing, a big crewel with the threads and the canvas, and I don't think it's canvas, whatever that fabric is. And so I've got that almost done so it can be for Nick's Christmas, because I've made things for Elsa and Martha, but I've never just hand-stitched something for Nick, so that's my other.
Jerry. We need you.
I was just I've been thinking about my grandmother, my dad's mother, and just in a quiet, she married a poor farmer and, struggled all her life, and he died fairly young. But I remember her at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and to me she was special because she would sit and talk with each child. and listen to them. And in a big, noisy family, that didn't happen very much, except when you sat down with Grandma. And the second person, while everybody else was talking, I was thinking of my dad. He's 92 now. And as I said a minute ago to somebody, he still played basketball when he was 90, so, which is better than I can do now. So, but I hope in some way that I can, you know, do half as much as what he did.
I have my whole life been surrounded by extremely strong women. And from family to bosses, I've only really ever had one male boss, and he was exceptionally good too. And like John Harper said once, you know, when he was serving here, guess what? Men can also serve at the altar at New Song, because it was very women-oriented. My mother was one of 5 sisters born within 7 years. My grandma Hoffler's favorite Christmas was the first one when she wasn't pregnant. They were 5 of the strongest, kindest, but toughest women you'd ever want to meet. And during World War II, loose lips would have never sunk any ships between the 5 of them. They could have run a corporation. Somewhere late in my mother's life, she downed or read something, and her mantra became an attitude of gratitude, which is one that I've also used. And when she was diagnosed with being ill and probably terminal, you know, the rest of us were a mess. Her sisters took it in stride. That was just the fact and the dance of life. You know, make it the best you can while you can. Have an attitude of gratitude to the end, which my mother did. And I think that becomes extremely important, is your attitude and your outlook. Being at the youth of my golden years, I'm not prepared to retire. I would be bored to tears retired. I'm in an industry as long as my health holds out, I can still do. And even though it's changed drastically, technologically wise and otherwise over the 30 plus years, still boils down to the same principles of treating everybody fairly. So a lot of it depends on your health. A lot of it depends upon your attitude. You know, my mother faced her death graciously. Not everybody does. Not everybody has good moms. You know, my dad struggled in life. He suffered from PTSD, really from World War II. Should have never been flying the last couple of missions he flew on. You know, his heart was good, but he didn't always know the best way to say it. But I've grown up with that whole thing. No matter what you're thrown at, just keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep an attitude of gratitude and a positive attitude. My mother put every one of us kids' stuff that was in her house in her car and drove it to each of our houses and sat us down and said, keep what you want, throw away the rest. Now, why I've kept my first grade kindergarten report cards through high school, I have no idea, because nobody really wants them, I'm pretty sure. And I was not quite as good a student as I thought I was. So, you know, memory fades with age. I think this has been it's been a fascinating group to witness and be a part of. I don't really much ever do Spirit School, but we've started to live stream them, and because it does reach another audience. And the things that have been spoken, have found very interesting. How do you incorporate that into the community here, and how do you incorporate that moving forward? As Jane said today, we're an aging congregation. You know, how do we keep people moving forward the best way they can as sages within the community, and keep them positive and positive thinking, and you know, and let them, as John Harper said, there's certain things he's limited to do now, help people discover new ways of being, because there is a community wisdom here that's pretty amazing. You know, when you take the time to listen and hear everybody's backstory, is quite fascinating. So that's my 2 cents, and I've spoken too long. Now I'm going to go back with my headphones and ignore the rest of you.
Okay. Let me.
Okay. Okay. My mom was always she's always generous with her money. Dad's a little more uptight. So she used to make Christmas special for us when we were younger. You know, the presents, the lit tree, cookies for Santa, stocking stuffers. And okay, there you go.
Okay, I was just going to say this is such an easy group to facilitate. I just have to sit back and listen. I wanted to mention a mentor that I have, my friend Jane, with whom I have been traveling for the last 20 years. 20 years ago, we spent 6 weeks tent camping, driving from Iowa to Alaska and back. But she's 10 years older than I am. So just this past week, she turned 98. But her mom lived to be 100. Her grandmother lived to be 104. So she's looking at a long life. And from being a very active person, she's looking at how to transition to continue to be productive when she's in her 90s, and when she's approaching that lifespan. And but one thing, like I get a grant from Thrivent, which I use for backpacks. She gets a grant, and she uses it to make hospice kits for new mothers in Africa for an organization in Minnesota. And initially, she would go out and buy all this stuff, and then she'd take it to church, and she'd have the people come and help put it all in little packets. Now, she has done it long enough. She's got other people all involved. She just says, okay, I've got a grant, I've got this gift card, who's going to go buy the stuff? And of course, more people start buying things even without the gift card, and they bring it to her house. And she has like a little party at her house while maybe 5 people or so, put it together. So she's continuing doing what she had done before, but she's just doing it in a different setting, involving more people. And so I admire that. And we're going to London together in the spring. And she keeps saying, this is probably my last trip, but we'll see.
She's 88, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said 98, which I was thinking, you're an 88?
Oh, no. Yeah. No, we both have a ways to go. So, but my second question is, in thinking about the people that you've mentioned, what were those traits that you admired? You said what they did, but what was a trait they admired? What kind of traits do you have you developed or hope to develop that will help you be more like your mentor? And you didn't tell us a mentor.
Well, I walked in, I'm still getting settled, so I started late. I have to think of my older sister who was visiting last weekend, and she's 6.5 years older than I am, and has been retired for quite some time, but has always been involved. She's not a churchgoer and has no plans to be, but she's done a lot of outside work, a lot of outside volunteering. She's taught English one-on-one to Afghan refugees that have settled in Eugene, Oregon, and they're looking to settle some more refugees, but she's without that right now, and she feels just very unhappy because she's not reaching out and doing that sort of thing. But she's done some amazing things in the years that she was retired, and I'm still kind of waiting for my retirement, and then I can branch out a little bit more, but I just think about that and think how I'd like to be more like her.
I'd kind of like to pick up on something that Mercedes Byrne-Krug said last week. She was talking about the process of aging, and she defined it as the deterioration of the body. So there's this arc of our physical bodies, which grows up to maturity, and then once you reach maturity, it begins to decline forever and ever and ever. Well, that's not true of the mind. Oddly and fortunately, the mind keeps going up and up and up, or can. So it can just keep expanding and accumulating all these life experiences. And so that's what I think is really important at some point in our lives, that we take on something new, something that expands our experience in our mind a little bit more and helps us to keep going. Because if we stop growing in our mind, we just sort of shut down. And that's an exact contrast to what the physical body does. And I think it's kind of interesting and kind of hope. It's a sign of hope. We may not be able to run sprints anymore, but we can do mental mental exercises around all the younger people mentally. What am I trying to say? Yeah, run circles around them in other ways. So that's the good thing about it.
Yeah, so in talking about traits that we hope will help us be productive, you might also talk about opportunities to serve or opportunities to be productive or helpful to other people that you may or may not have pursued yet, what that might be.
So I guess the trait that comes to mind, and I was talking about my mother earlier, was persistence. And she was, if she was knocked down, and she was knocked down many times in her life, she just got up, reinvented herself, and moved on. At the end, she was very weak, so she couldn't do very much anymore. But she struck up a friendship with her final assisted living friend, came in to help her. And they just had long talks. And we didn't know about that. We didn't quite know about their relationship. But after she died, the caretaker and her husband had us over. And she said, and they were from they were Indian, I guess. And she said, your mother is an old soul. And that means that all that persistence, all the time she was knocked down and got up, was like living another life. And so at the end of her life, she had a lot of wisdom and a lot of empathy.
I think a spirit of adventure is enviable in older people. And also sort of a graciousness with which some people accept the physical limitations that they do have. I mean, I think of Charles, who lost his sight. He, lost his ability to walk around like he had been able to do. And yet, his mind was still good, and he loved to talk to people. And, I didn't know him as well as some of you did, but just that ability to sort of graciously accept the help you need that you didn't once, that's kind of how I want to age. I want to age gracefully. And on a side note, we're talking about productivity a lot, but I think there's also a grace in learning how to be still in retirement. Maybe meditation, maybe reading more or whatever, that doesn't necessarily serve other people, but it's still, it shows that there's a richness to life that's not lost. And so I guess I would search for richness more than productivity.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thinking of, or picking up on richness, I've spent the last 6 or 7 months since I retired doing a lot of exploring Iowa City and the area and looking for new wildflowers, taking photos. And so I think of it as, in some ways, documenting the native plants that we have around here, but also becoming aware, and it feeds my own spirituality and sense of being connected with the earth. And not sure where to go from there, but it's a lot of exercise for my mind, but also some physical walking around, and connects me with the beauty that may be kind of hidden because it's little or hard to find. So just that's where I start. I'm not sure where I go.
Well, I had a kind of a different experience. I'm talking about an aging person who is younger than me and still alive, where we think a lot of time about people in our past history, but this person was helping me with some emotional, with my depression, anxiety, ADHD and stuff. And he was saying that the best therapy he could describe as my mantra now is to action or movement. And I think that explained a lot about how to go forward. And it's surprising how you get some wise wisdom from younger people and stuff. And I thought that was just a good thing for apostolic action or any other ideas.
How about our understanding of religion? I can remember when I was 9 years old, in the summertime I used to lie down on my back in the grass and imagine God up there and the clouds, and the clouds, of course, were his beard. So my understanding of religion was pretty shallow, and it's just been getting wider and deeper with every year. So there's, in some ways, soulful aging, which was the name of the series, is really right. Our souls may not age with our bodies. Keep getting bigger and wiser and deeper. So just a thought.
Peggy had...
Well, I was going to say that I think just exercise is very critical to keeping yourself as lively as you'd like to be. I know I certainly don't represent that because I have such terrible balance that I have to be sure I can keep standing up, but I work on it. And I think there are a lot of things that you can read and find about the tremendous amount of good that just having an exercise routine can do. And I have found that really to be true, just in terms not only of trying to improve my balance, which I think was a lost cause, but just keeping your body somewhat fit and still able to do things. And I think that that's a critical part of having aging be wonderful. I'm kind of glad to be older.
I'm trying to raise her chair, this way you don't fall over.
Well, I've fallen in church, but thank you very much. But I really do work on it. And I walk, when I take long walks, I use a crutch because that keeps me from falling down so much. And I use this around and just have to kind of overcome it and keep trying, keep physically doing things, because I have an exercise routine that was given to me by a physical therapist, and I just keep at it.
I was just going to say that I think it's important, or the thing that I think it takes courage. You know, that was one of the things that I think about, courage to maybe go outside the country to help with a Habitat for Humanity home, or I helped teach English as a second language, and after a while I really felt really like I wasn't a good teacher because I wasn't trained as a teacher, and I thought, but I think sometimes, you know, it just takes a lot of courage to maybe just talk to people in our language and, you know, try to communicate and help them understand. And, you know, they're not expecting a board-certified teacher, I don't think.
I think a lot of time they're looking for a conversation partner.
Yeah, and I guess for me, I think it takes some courage to believe that you can do that.
One skill that I am trying to pick up now, something from earlier times, is quilting. Not making a huge quilt, but in Hawaii one time, you know Hawaiian quilts, how many stitches they have all around, very intricate patterns. And at a museum, I bought an applique thing that just had a pattern on it, but didn't have any of the stitching, and I just stitched around it, you know, and ended up with a pillow cover. And I've done a baby quilt where I outline all the little items on the quilt. And that's not a big skill, that's not a real artistic thing, but it's something that I kind of left behind a long time ago, a lot of sewing, and now I'm kind of picking up sewing again. And also, I'm seeing, you know, aging in place and growing spiritually too. I'm thinking after maybe 15 years of not having a spiritual director, new questions are coming up to me that hadn't occurred to me before, maybe just because of my stage in life, and that I'm thinking I really need to have some deep religious, theological discussions, maybe not very high level intellectually, but things that are touching me and that I'm concerned about. And I think those are areas where we can all kind of grow. Sometimes we hate to admit that everything and all the rituals and everything that we've done for the last 60 or so years may not exactly fit us anymore. And if it doesn't, what does feed our souls? And that's a big area for exploration. But I'm also thinking about the people here who, a year or so ago, when we were looking at how to help immigrant families, and I think we've taken a big step. We've taken a couple big steps with Anya and her family, and then with Olena and her husband. And we're supporting, especially through Nancy, the Immigrant Welcome Network. I think we're on a good step there. But a lot of people said, when they responded to what they thought they could do to help immigrants, said they could help tutor children. If a child was new to the country and having difficulty or just needing help in school, that was something that they felt they could do. And whether a child is an immigrant or not, there are a lot of children in schools, a lot of elementary age or junior high school age children who could benefit from tutors, from someone who could maybe help them with a lesson or just listen to them, try to do something, read aloud to them. In the town where I was before, we had we developed an organization called Fluent Reading is Our Goal. And we started out just a group of grandmothers reading aloud to children, just thinking, how many kids nowadays have parents read to them at bedtime? That's really helpful in terms of promoting reading, just a love of reading. And I thought, you know, if there were still people here interested in doing any kind of tutoring, we could look at the local school, the school closest to us here. As a teacher, I had a group of there was a group of grandparents in the location where my school was who would come in during the day, maybe half an hour on a specific day. And I knew they were coming, and I could plan that this child is having a specific problem, and the older person would take the child out of the classroom and just relate to the child one-on-one. I never saw what they did. I just trusted that it was going to be good for the child to have that person there. And there are opportunities like that don't necessarily require skill. They require patience and willingness to mentor and even end up talking about your childhood as it relates to a story that you've read or something. But I know you all probably have your own ideas of what.
I've done that before with music. I sat down with a child and the child practiced their music, playing the piano, and just being there listening, even though I wasn't talented in that area.
Well, that's wonderful, just giving them an audience, an appreciative audience.
I was just, somebody on Facebook, it's a niece, excuse me, her daughter, who is 8, is having a pen pal of her grandmother. So, but it's really her great-grandmother. And they're doing snail mail and everything. And this child is so excited to get this letter, and she immediately sits down and writes something back again. And, you know, something like that, if we had little kids, you know, at the school or whatever, say somebody couldn't get in to see them, you know, for mobility issues or whatever, but they could be their pen pal. It's just a thought.
Mm-hmm. It is kind of exciting to get something in the mail that's not an ad nowadays, isn't it?
So I think aging spiritually and intellectually is a process of widening and deepening. And I think one of the most deepening experiences I've had recently is when I read a book that I know Jane has cited from the pulpit, and that was Braiding Sweetgrass. Because the book is written by a botanist, and she describes beautifully how exciting it is, even on the microscopic level, to see life in all of its complexity and intelligence in a way that you never would have imagined had you not read the book. And so it's like it's opened my eyes to another dimension. And that's something that I think is kind of telling about aging, because we can expand our minds and expand our understanding and reach new dimensions all the time in areas we never thought even existed. So the benefit of reading can lead us into another dimension as well. I recommend it for all of us. Braiding Sweetgrass. If you haven't done it, read it.
This person
Comments for the rest of us to hear?
She is a botanist, but she also belongs to a northern New York State tribe. And so what she does is to braid the two traditions into each. Exactly. So she wanted to be a botanist. She went to a university. The advisor said, "Why do you want to be a botanist?" And she explained nature as she understood it, in part from a native tradition. And he said, "Oh, that's not botany. Botany is science." You know, she was being not scientific enough. But by the end of the book, you're quite convinced that the indigenous way is part of the truth, for sure. Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful.
Okay, I'm just going to read a suggestion for an activity that maybe we all can do in our leisure time, if we have any. Okay. Visualize going through a routine day as your ideal elder, feeling confident, respected, and socially useful. Be as concrete and detailed as possible in imagining encounters with colleagues at work, loved ones, friends and associates, and mentees. Know that by envisioning a positive future, you are seeding consciousness with the expectation of your own potential growth. And this has been an interesting series to participate in. And if any of you feel like you want to continue or have any additional questions for discussion, subjects for discussion on aging, I think Bob would really enjoy continuing with this. But for me, I'm just going to close this session with something that's mentioned in the book, Aging to Saging, one that he had recommended. It's called The Elder Creed. And the suggestion that we look at it and then we can say it together. The Elder Creed. Oh, I need one myself. I feel like we have really positive people here who have positive attitudes about aging, but this is an upper in itself. So if you wouldn't mind, let's read it out loud together. An elder is a person who is still growing, still a learner, still with potential, and whose life continues to have a promise for and connection to the future. An elder is still in pursuit of happiness, joy, and pleasure, and her or his birthright to these remains intact. Moreover, an elder is a person who deserves respect and honor, and whose work it is to synthesize wisdom from long life experience and formulate this into a legacy for future generations.
I don't want to bring up anything unfortunate about aging, but I really do find the existence of a lot of ageism in groups and things where, because you're older, what you have to contribute or what you have to say is simply overlooked. And I don't know how we get past that, but that is, I think, also something that we need to do, and I think we need to stand up and insist on being heard. I belonged to a group that went on and on forever. And at one point I said, yes, I would put some ideas that had come up in the meeting into a letter and have it, and we could use that. And then when I came back the next week, they'd totally forgotten that I had anything to contribute.
or had done anything about it. And it was just as though, I mean, it was just a matter of, I think, just thinking that because you're one of the old ones and not one of the more right in the thrust of life persons, that you really won't have anything that's very important to say. And I think I learned that that was important to do by attending a lot of committee meetings at Scattergood, because there's a woman there who was very much everyone's elder. And what I saw in that group of young people and of young teachers and of people that were participating in all of this trustee and committee member kind of stuff was that people looked to her first for ideas that they should have. And it was such an unusual and wonderful experience to have. And I don't think it's very common that people look to the elders because they really might have something that's important to say. And I think that that's something that when we find ourselves kind of walked over the top of, that we need to stand up and try hard to insist that we be heard. Because I don't think elders are really respected and heard very much. I think they're considered doddering and not likely to have anything very worthwhile or filled with life to contribute to things. So I think that's an aspect of what we need to do as elders. Not put up with ageism.
You go, girl.
Well, I'm done. Any other comments?